We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we are situated is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of Siksika Nation, Kainai Nation, Piikani Nation, and Blackfeet Nation in Montana. It is also part of Treaty 7, which also include Iari Nakota Nation, Tsuut'ina Nation, and Métis Nation No. 3. Their presence and culture enrich us all.
This is Cooking in Canada.
After the ranch, I invited Heather and the crew back to my mom's house for lunch. On the menu, Bison Burgers. I really wanted to cook with fresh bison meat, but the only bison we could find were the prepackaged burgers. Still, I wanted us all to taste a food that was such a staple of the diet of pre-colonial indigenous people. We're grilling up some buffalo burgers for lunch. We just went to go visit two white buffalo, which the white buffalo is an especially sacred animal. But the buffalo were a very important food and animal for the indigenous people living in this region. And before colonization, they were very abundant, and after colonization, they were not abundant. And so really, this is one of the only ways that people can interact with buffalo meat right now is through these buffalo burgers. But so that's what we're doing today, and it's exciting and good that we can still interact with buffalo meat, but it would be nice if there were more ways to interact with it than like a product like this. So delicious. It has slightly different flavor than beef, but I would compare them.
We tried buffalo hamburgers. It was delicious, but for me it's different than the beef. The normal hamburgers is a little more strong, but it's delicious. I recommend this.
Here is the buffalo burger. For me it's a little strong, but I think it tastes delicious and I really like it.
That's good. What do you think, Mom?
It tastes great. We've just finished our beautiful bison burger lunch, so thank you for cooking those. It was fun after seeing the bison at the ranch to come home and taste what the meat was like, and I appreciate that. So thank you for cooking that. I thought it was really important to talk about historically why the buffalo was so important to the Plains people, not just the Blackfoot, whose territory we're on right now, but the Cree, my tribe as well, used the buffalo for absolutely everything. They didn't waste anything. They would go on buffalo hunts, and there's all around here, there's buffalo jumps where they would corral with people buffalo and get them running and falling over the cliff, and then the women would be at the bottom, and the women would actually do the butchering of finishing them off, basically, the buffalo. So they would only take what they needed. They would never waste anything, and as a result they would have the thick fur for coats and bedding and things to keep them warm in the winter. They would use the horns for drinking cups. They would use the muscle on the back. They would separate the muscle and turn it into thread, sinew, you've heard of. And so absolutely nothing was wasted ever. And they were real. I always say, when I tell kids this, that the buffalo of the past was like Walmart today. So, but like I said, no waste, nothing. So when settlers came along, they the government and people who wanted to basically stop the plains people from following the buffalo, they wanted them in one spot on reserves and wanted to have them sign treaty with the government. So people, when they built the CPR, the rail line in Canada, across Canada, they had people go out and hunt the buffalo and slaughter them. And there's stories that where people would see huge numbers of carcasses just rotting on the prairie. And the Native people at that time just thought it was so wasteful, they couldn't believe it. And I did bring some photos these are from Glenbow Museum. They're historically accurate. And they show where they started collecting buffalo skulls as trophy to make pictures for these people to send home. And they thought it was just an amazing thing that they were doing. But what it did was it took away the food source and everything else that the buffalo provided for the people. You know, the meat and the bedding and the teepee covers and all that stuff. And the people were then forced to rely on the government for supplies. The government, it kind of forced them in a way to sign the treaties and stay on this land, and they basically had to learn how to farm, and they became sometimes like super dependent on the government to provide all the things that they'd been providing themselves for eons.
So the buffalo, when the buffalo were gone, when the buffalo were basically like purposefully eradicated, that was the death of the buffalo was the death of the prairie people culture.
No, I don't want to give that
sorry.
idea.
Okay.
No, that's okay, because
Or like their way of life as they knew it at that time.
yes,
is what I meant to say.
yeah. That's the movement and following the buffalo is often what they did, but certainly not the culture. But I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people make that mistake, that they think that was the death of culture, and not at all. You know, we don't want to give it the idea that this is something new that has suddenly sprung up. It was always there at certain times in history. It went underground, and but it's still there
living.
was still living,
Very
still a
much.
living culture. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow. Well, it's great that we got to interact with the buffalo meat today and the living buffalo today, and thank you for sharing these pictures with me.
As disturbing as they are.
Yes, because they're so it's really like shows, first of all, how abundant the numbers of buffalo were at the time.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to how accessible it is to get buffalo meat now, it's really stark.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good. Yeah. Do you have any questions about the historical part? I have a great story that if you want to hear about, and it's a legend, again, that has been around forever and has been passed down through the generations, and it sort of explains how the buffalo became such an important symbol and an important source of life for the Plains people. And it's a little sad in the beginning, but you know how people back 200 years ago would travel with their teepee poles and dogs would pull them. They domesticated some wolf pups and had dogs pulling these long poles called travois, and or travois as some people call it, as English people call them. And they'd pack their belongings on these things, and there'd be teepee things, maybe packages of dried meat, and oftentimes babies that were swaddled and put in cradle boards, and they were strapped to these travois. And so they say that a long, long, long time ago, there was a group of people, a clan that was traveling across the prairie and looking to where they were going to set up their next place. And their baby was strapped to a travois, and it was being pulled by a dog. And the dog saw a gopher run off in this, field. So the dog took off after the gopher, and of course carried the baby with them. And the mother and the dad and the grandfather couldn't catch this dog. The dog was long gone, and so was the travois with the baby. So they said that after miles and miles of the dog kind of broke out of the harness, and the baby flipped off of the travois and was laying in the middle of the prairie crying. And it was an infant. And so they said that then the buffalo herd was nearby. The buffalo heard the cries of something they'd never heard before. So they formed this circle around a baby. And the buffalo started talking and saying, what's this creature? And they said, well, we don't know, but he's obviously small and needs nurturing and needs care. So there was a buffalo, female buffalo, that had been nursing her young. And so they started letting this baby nurse on this female buffalo. So the baby was kept alive. They snuggled around the baby, kept it warm at night, and the baby grew up with the herd of buffalo. So they were growing, and he was moving with the buffalo as he learned how to walk, and he lived like this for probably 15 years. And finally, the buffalo called him. They'd been wandering through the prairies, and there was the grandfather buffalo called the young boy in, and he said, we've come across some of your own race, and it's time you return to your people, because you're not one of us. And the young boy didn't want to leave. And he said, no, you are who I need to be with. You are my group. And the buffalo insisted that he go back to humans. And he went back. By then, his grandfather had died. It was the same tribe that had lost the baby. The young boy left. But he said that the buffalo then said, you don't want to leave us, but we will always, always be here for you. And we will provide you with whatever you need. And in fact, we will provide for your tribe whatever you need from us. We will give to you. And we'll give to you willing, because the time you spent with us was just as important for us as it was for you. So the young boy did go home, was reunited with his mother years later, and told them all about the buffalo, told them what plants they could eat, and how he could call the buffalo when they needed supplies and food and shelter. So that's just a little story I was told a long time ago, and I thought it was just so appropriate, when we're talking so much about bison and buffalo.
And so that story illustrates basically how strong the ties are between the buffalo and the plains people.
Absolutely.
It's like a family tie.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
And today was so amazing and interesting. Like interacting historically, like with these. There's another photo over here, like where you were talking about the women who are.
Yes, I love these photos because these are the old ladies that are preparing the food. And one of them, I think, is pounding meat or something. And I just love the old lady on the top because she's got a pipe out of her mouth. And lots of times old Indigenous women back in the day would smoke a pipe. So it's a beautiful photo, and it just shows how much work Indigenous women did back in the day and continue to do today. I mean, you met Lisa, who runs that amazing business, and it's run by strong Indigenous women. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know how to really it's hard to kind of cap off this conversation because I feel like it's such a larger conversation. Like we're only able to really scratch the surface right now about how important the buffalo are to not only to the plains people but to the environment of the plains, to the ecosystem, to
they were the first environmentalists, right? They would only take what they needed.
Yeah.
And would use everything and left no waste. So you're right. It's a way larger conversation. So
yeah, and I think we can all learn a lesson from this idea where this chap over here obviously thinks he's like doing a great deed of some sort, and it's like he was people were very misguided about. Well, you say misguided because you know it's very painful to talk about somebody's, as we were saying, like life as they knew it
would change forever, right?
Yeah, changed exactly.
Yeah.
Next time on Cooking in Canada Season 2. Oh, it looks beautiful. Oh, no. It's perfectly golden. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks great.
You could slide it in a big plate. Do you want to take
Oh my gosh, my first banner.
your first banner?
Yeah.